Good afternoon, good morning, good evening for those of you joining us. We're just ready to get started here. This is week 3 of our 5-week Bluebeam Review series. Someone's asking questions, were the previous webinars recorded? Yes, they were, and they have been uploaded to our YouTube channel. If you open up the chat window, there's information about the YouTube channel, including a hyperlink that'll take you straight to it, where you can review week 1 and week 2, and you can subscribe to that channel as well. Okay, I've got about 60 minutes or less and 20 topics I want to cover, so I'm going to get going. You are muted today. There is a Q&A feature. Feel free to use that. I'm working alone, so I may not respond to your question right away, but you'll see if you watch the previous webinars, at the end of each recording, I try to reply to as many of the questions as I can and put those at the back of the recording. At the end of today's session, or when you leave, there will be a pop-up survey. It's only, I think, 5 or 6 questions. Very brief. It's really important to us, and we do ask you to fill that out. Just keep in mind it is anonymous, so if you answer the questions that say, we could benefit from training, we'd like to talk about it, to include your contact information. A couple of weeks ago, we had a few that were sent in without the contact information, so try to remember to do that. Again, we do have a YouTube channel. This session is being recorded as well, and probably by Friday, it will be processed and uploaded to the YouTube channel. Should you have any questions or want to contact me directly, that's my phone number, email address, and that's our Bluebeam webpage where you can learn all about our training program and consulting services. Those are just 5 of the 8 training courses that we offer. These are all 8-hour courses, either virtual or on-site, and you can get detailed descriptions and agendas for all of that at that webpage. One last reminder, I am using Bluebeam Revu 20. If you're using 2019 or 2018, it's not going to be identical, but it will be very similar. If you're using Revu 2017 or anything older than that, it's going to look very different. Next week will be again Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, and next week is all about cloud technology. So let's talk about tool sets. What I've done here is I've created a profile that has no tool sets visible other than 2 that are common to every profile, and that's one called My Tools and one called Recent Tools. And in particular, I want you to understand what Recent Tools does. I'm going to get started by doing a right-click, new PDF, 8.5 by 11, empty, just a blank page. And as I'm drawing markups, I want you to watch the Recent Tools. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to draw a cloud. As I'm in here, I'm going to draw a highlight, and then I'm going to draw a polygon. Not only is all of that being tracked down here in the markup list, if you've never had it open so that you can see it as you're doing it, the Recent Tools tool set constantly keeps track of what you're doing as you're doing it and saving that in there so that you could reuse those tools. But here's the thing about Recent Tools. I'm going to save this file, although I don't have to. I'm just going to save it to my local desktop. I'll go to desktop and just call it junk. And I'm going to, now notice I've got 3 tools that are in my Recent Tools. When I kill Bluebeam and I come back and relaunch Bluebeam, whatever was in the Recent Tools is cleared every time you leave and restart Bluebeam. It's not a bug, it's not an error, it's the way it works. This is a temporary tracking of what you've done as far as markups are concerned. So it doesn't matter what file you're in. I'll create another new one here. If you have done something in your drawing that has been captured here in Recent Tools and you like it, you want to reuse it, you want to make a standard version of that, you need to get it out of Recent Tools before you shut down Bluebeam, because if you don't, it's gone. It's just the way it's worked. Now you can grab it, and if I had multiple tool sets here, you'd be able to drag it from here to any one of those. The only other one I have open right now is called My Tools, so I'm just going to grab it and drag it and drop it up there. It, in essence, makes a copy of it, and at any time you want, you can click on the little gear settings button and you can clear out your recents. There's tools, things to do like that. But you'll notice that I was able to take it from recent to make sure I don't lose it and move a copy of it up to My Tools. If you're paying close attention, you'll also notice that every tool that I drop into My Tools is automatically assigned a little shortcut number key. And if I wanted to place this, this particular pencil or ink or line item again, I can just enter that number and it automatically goes into placing that particular markup. Those are just automatically assigned by the system as you start dropping things into My Tools, but My Tools is the only tool set that does that. So next on our list is going to be, how do you create your own custom tool sets to where you can start saving your markups in there, and why would you want to do that? Well, that's very simple. When you have tool sets here, they each have their own little gear icon for those various settings. But right at the top of that category, and by the way, I got into this panel by going to the left side panel, looking for the little toolbox, opening it up, and then accessing all of the tool sets that are visible within this particular profile. But right at the top of that panel is a button with a little chevron that says Tool Chest. And when you click on that, it brings down your list of available tool sets, whether they're visible or not, depends on whether you've checked them off or told it that you'd like to see them. But down at the very bottom is the Manage Tool Sets interface. And I'm going to say Manage Tool Sets. And that opens up a list of all the known tool sets on my system, and it allows me to do various manipulations to them. But the one I'm looking for at this point is called Add, and it's on the lower right-hand corner, and I'm just going to hit Add. And I'm going to give it a name. So I'm going to call this Week 3 Webinar. It says here, these are some choices that I can choose from as I'm creating this is, do you want it to be displayed? Well, yeah, I do. Do you want it to have a relative path? I do, because I might move it and then I'd like to have it relative to, where I'm working with Bluebeam at the time. But in the middle of those is a very important one here, and it's important for two reasons. One is it says show this in all profiles. You most likely don't want to do that, but there may be a situation where the tool set that you're creating is something that you want visible in all profiles, and that's a convenient way of making that happen immediately by turning that on. There's one thing to know about it, and that is if I go ahead and do that, now it shows up in my list once I give it a name and I save it to the folder where Bluebeam is anticipating all of my tool sets to be, is now if I come in here and look at it, I can grab any one of these existing tool sets that I've got available but not visible, and the red delete button is activated and ready for me to just completely delete that file, unless I go down to this bottom one. And the reason it is disabled for the delete is because, not because I've got it active or I'm working on it or I've got it displayed or not displayed, it's 100% because of my choice to make it show in all profiles. When a tool set is displayed in all profiles, you cannot delete it. All right, so what you would have to do is modify it and undo that choice. That will now make it only available in the current profile, and then you'd be able to select it and delete it if indeed you chose to do that for some reason. So I'm going to make it visible, and I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to open it up right here. Now I've got two markups in my document right now. I'm going to draw a couple more. I'm going to draw a highlight, and then my document doesn't have any scale, so I'm going to go to the lower right hand corner and I'm going to add a scale to it, and I'll say, just for giggles, this is 1/4 of an inch equals a foot. And then I'm going to place a area measurement, and then I'm going to go place a poly length, so that I've got some markups in there that have actual measurement values associated with them as well. Any one of those things I can select, I can right click, and I can choose Add to Toolset. Now I've only got two that are available to me. You see that Recent Tools obviously is not one that's available because that's not how it works. It tracks you. You don't put stuff into it consciously. And then if you put something in there, then as I said, you want to get it out of there before you shut down Bluebeam. So I'm going to choose this new one and I'm going to put it in there. I'm going to choose this cloud and I'm going to put that into that same one. Then I'm going to grab the area measurement and I'm going to put that in there. And then I'm going to grab the poly length and I'm going to put that in there as well. So I've got a total of 4 markups from my 5 markups that I've now put into a tool set for future reuse. I'm going to grab everything in the document and just delete it because it was only there so that I could populate my tool set. When you're looking at a tool set that you've created and put markups into, there's 2 different ways of using them and putting them back into documents. One way is to just simply come over there and click on it, and then it will go into your drawing, whichever drawing you currently have active, and you place a data point, and it makes an exact copy of it. Now, as soon as it did it, it stopped and it let go. That's because in the status bar at the bottom of the page, I currently have my reuse markup tool disabled. I'm going to turn that back on. Now, when I come in and choose that same markup and I place it, I can keep placing it and placing it and placing it. So it works the same way. This reuse tool works the same way with tool set markups as it does when you're creating markups from scratch. It starts a function, and I'm just doing Control Z here to undo the things that I've done. It starts a process, and it keeps doing that process and repeating that process until you hit the escape key. Now that's one way of placing a markup from a tool set, and it's called drawing mode. What that means is I'm going to choose it and I'm going to place it and I want to copy that's exactly like it, exactly like it. However, you can go hover over one of these markups and you can right click on it and you can see that there's a menu of things that you can do, and one of the things you can do is called properties mode. I'm going to toggle that markup in my tool set from drawing mode to properties mode, and now when I choose it, what it's going to do, it's going to allow me to create a new instance of that markup with the same markup identity and characteristics, but it can look different in shape. Right? So I can click and drag this and I'll still get a blue cloud. I can click, 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 eventually double click, and I'll still get a blue cloud. So that's the difference between placing a markup in property mode versus drawing mode. And a quicker way of swapping around, obviously that's drawing mode, is instead of right clicking and choose that, you can just double click on it. And when you double click inside of your tool set on a markup that is capable of using that tool, it just auto toggles the little icon to tell you that all four of these now will be placed in property mode, except for maybe that one. So now that one's in drawing mode, I get an exact copy. If I toggle it, now it just simply set the parameters and I can do something fresh that will exactly match it, but it will also maintain all of my standards. Right, I'm going to delete all of that and we're going to talk about standards. When I come in here and I draw a cloud from here to here and it's blue and has all that type of stuff in it, unless I go to the trouble of making certain that all of my defaults have been set to exactly the way I want it, it's always going to default back to, the delivered standard. Now I'm going to right click on that and look at some of the things that we can do. And some of the things you really want to think about here is whether or not you want to put this on a particular layer. An example of this is when you're doing design review. You probably don't just want all markups to be blue. You want to have a standard that say this group of project participants, say the architectural design firm, when they're commenting on our document, especially if we're in the cloud working in a studio session where we're all working together, when they place markups, we want them to look like this blue cloud, and we want them specifically to be on a named layer. And I'm going to create a layer called architects comments. But I don't want that to be my default because I do a whole bunch of different types. And what I want to do now is here, if I go back and hover over that cloud, that copy of that markup was created several minutes ago. It didn't have any layer assigned to it. It really didn't have any specifics assigned to it. So I'm just going to go grab it and delete it, get it out of my tool set. Later on, I'm going to grab this one and I'm going to make sure it's exactly what I want. I'm going to change the fill to also be blue, but it's going to have a, very light screening associated with it. It's already on the proper layer that I want. Now I'm going to add it to my tool chest. And now when I hover over there, you'll see that it's got a layer assignment to it. So every time I place it, it will go to the layer specifically assigned to architectural comments versus engineer comments versus contractor comments versus auditor comments and whatever your particular project participants happen to be. An additional feature of putting markups on specific layers before you put them into a tool set is that later on, if you work on a document that doesn't have those layers, they'll automatically get created by the tool set. So in this example, if I go look at this drawing, there are no layers in existence at this moment in time. But if I go to my tool set and just hover, we can see that my Project Manager toolset uses a layer for PM comments called Project Managers, and for inspectors, it's got a layer called Inspectors, and that's where it expects those, particular markups to be located. So if I choose a Project Manager markup and I go and place it in the document, and then I go back and check my layers, just by the act of marking up the document, the layers have been generated automatically. If I go back and choose an inspector markup, for example, and I do something along those lines, and then we go back and check the layers, we'll see that that one's been generated as well. Now, one catch to this is that if you're working in a studio session, the layer names have to exist in the file before you start placing the markups into the drawing, or they're going to be placed in there without the layer assignments. Here I'm in a studio session and I've uploaded a copy of that exact same file, and if I go look at the layers, we can see that there are no layer names created here. If I go back to tool sets and I use the exact same tool set with the exact same markups, and I go and I place a markup into this document, we'll see that the layer name has been prevented from being created. And if I go and select that markup and right click, we can see it also has not been assigned to a layer. Now that will work properly provided the PDF file has the layer names before it's uploaded to the studio session. But it still calls it a cloud. And what I really should do is before I put anything into a tool set, I should put some real good thought into what I'm naming it, so that when I go and look at the markup list down here, instead of it just saying cloud, I would rather it have some information that helps me understand what that thing is. So you really want to change that to say these are the, I'll just call it architectural. It's already in there, that's fine. These are architectural, and that's fine. Now, I don't want to keep doing that over and over and over and over again. So instead, what I should have done, the better methodology for you guys to follow is to, when you have your graphic created that you're going to put into a tool set, in addition to doing any kind of layer manipulation that you're going to do, also, while it's highlighted, go look at the properties panel. And inside there, specifically, you want to look at the top of the panel up there, and you want to look at the value that's in the subject field, right in here. Right, so I'm going to put architectural. So it's got the proper label that I want. It's got all the values that I want. Now I can either come back and right click and add it to the tool set, or directly from the properties panel, I can just go to the bottom of the panel and there's another link inside of there where I can just automatically pop it in there. And now it has both a good subject, and it's got a good layer, and it's got all the properties and characteristics the way I want them. I've already shown you by double clicking or choosing drawing mode, you can change the behavior of a markup as you put it back into your file. You can also change the behavior of the tool set itself, not just the markups that are inside of it. I'm going to minimize these. Currently, this displaying of the content of a tool set is called symbol mode, because what it's doing is it's showing me, in essence, an abbreviated icon for each of the markups that are inside of this tool set. But if you go to that gear and you click on the settings and you change it from symbol to detail display, it's the same information but displayed to the user in a very different way. And it also gives you access to 2 other columns of information for all of the markups that you put into your particular tool set. So now I can go in there and look at architectural, but let's say I really wanted it called architect's comments, or architectural clouds, or whatever I wanted that's just slightly different. Instead of recreating that again and again and again, when your tool set is in this mode, in this detail mode, these are not just display. If you double click, now you can go in there and you can change these subjects. All right, I'm going to say this is an architectural clouds, which is what I really wanted. And maybe I go into comment and I put comments in here and I'll say clouds applied by AEC firm. Now, if I try to click on label in this detail mode, I cannot get to label on any markup types that are not measurement markups. Labels are only relevant here to measurement markups. So if I try to click where it says highlight and double click and get to label, I can't. I can get to comment, but not label. If I go to either one of the measurement markups and I double click on comment, I can't get to that. But if I go over to label, now I can go in there and I can put a specific label on it. So here for chilled water line, maybe I put a label in there that puts like CWL. For this area measurement, maybe I say that this is carpet, but more specifically over here, it's a Berber. Or again, lighting fixtures, it's wall mounted, ceiling mounted. What's the pressure rating of the pipe that this linear measurement represents? Whatever information is relevant to you. But that allows you, when you're in this detail mode, to not only change the subject, but to change the comment and the label of your content of your tool set before you ever start putting it into a doc. There's other things you can do with the display, and then we're going to come back and talk about why subject and label are important. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and I'm just going to, I'll put it back to symbol mode. I'm also going to shut it down completely, and I'm going to slide this over to give myself a little bit more screen real estate. One of the other features of a tool set is even when it's completely collapsed like that, it's still accessible. If you come over to where your tool set is, there's an arrow at the end of the row. And if you click on that, it's just a little shortcut to get to the content that's inside of it. Now, some of my tool set libraries have 50 or more icons in it. And when that happens, you'll see this menu pop up and fill, about an inch wide and about 10 or 12 inches, 10 or 11 inches tall. So how much information shows up depends on how much is in the tool set itself. But it's just a way of keeping your screen real estate down, but still having access to the markups that you've put inside of that. Now, you can also, if you've done any kind of customization of your toolbars, or you can add it to any toolbar that, that's available, you can go in and choose your tool set. You can go to that gear, and down near the bottom is something called pin. When you go to pin, you can identify an existing toolbar that you would like to make this tool set part of. All right, now on the far right, down where my markup list is, there's one down at the bottom there called shapes. So if I go grab pin and I say add this thing to the shapes, what it did is it added my list, my entire tool set right at the bottom of that shapes toolbar. Now I can come over here and click on it and also get access to it. And that way I can leave this panel window completely closed, and I can just, whenever I want, just go over there and hit that and choose the thing I want and then start placing it into the drawing. So it's multiple different ways of getting to your markups that are inside of these tool sets. We're going to come back, as I said, and talk about that label and subject thing here just a second. One last thing I want to point out to you as far as the interface goes. My screen right now is 1920 pixels by 1080, and those symbols that are inside of my tool set, they might look a little hard to see whether I'm in drawing mode right now, and it's a little hard to tell exactly what that looks like. Down at the bottom of the interface, there's a sliding magnification button down here. If you just grab that and slide it left and right, it gets bigger or smaller depending on where you put that thing at. I need to be very clear, that has nothing to do with the scaling of the symbol as it goes into your drawing. If I choose drawing mode and I click and I place that shape, and then I come back and I lower the magnification and I choose that thing and place it again, it's going to be identical. All right, this slider bar down here is purely a magnification feature so that you can see it more clearly and you've got control over the size of those icons as they're popping up. And if you do magnify it, say along those lines there, and I go back to that toolbar that was over there, it still supports that because whether you docked it into a toolbar or not, it's still using the same core part of Bluebeam to look at these parameters, these behavioral choices that you've made, and then enforcing those as it does its work. Now I'm going to grab all of this stuff and I'm going to delete all that. And now I want to talk about the subject and the label combination that I've put inside of here for one of these things, like this one here that says it's, if I hover over it, it'll tell me that's chilled water line. If I hover over this one, it tells me it's carpet with Berber and so on. I've already covered in past week information on custom columns. So down at the bottom here, in addition to these delivered columns, we can go into the markups list, columns, and at the very bottom of that interface is the Manage Columns button, where we can create columns of information that are unique and specific to us. Maybe we put it's a common column that people create called responsibility, where there's a pick list that says, okay, I drew this markup, now I'm assigning it to a human being or to a subcontractor or whoever it may be, but responsibility is a common one. Now I could sit here and create them from scratch, but there's one called import. There's an option here called import, and I've already created some custom columns and saved them. So I'm going to import one of my custom columns by going to where I put them, which is my review files, custom columns. Let's go look at flooring types. Right, so I import that, and it says, all right, I'm going to put this into your file. So here's what I have. I have a column for tracking flooring type that has a list of types: shag carpet, Berber carpet, tile, 9x9 tile, concrete, and each of those is assigned a dollar value for their square footage cost. Right? And this is just a pick list of items. But what's important is it's got a subject and it's got something called an item. When you take a markup in a tool set that has a subject and label combination and it matches a subject and item combination in a custom column, it can automatically detect that relationship and automatically figure out what the cost value or assigned values are. All you have to do is choose the symbol and place it into your drawing and let the system do the rest. Now I've also got a formula one here that says, okay, well then you take the area, multiply it by the cost of the flooring type and tell me what this is going to cost. I could manually come in here and draw an area measurement, but it doesn't have a good name. It's a subject. It doesn't have a good label. If I wanted to use this, I'd have to double click in there and I'd have to manually choose what it was. But because I set up a subject, label, item combination that are anticipating working together, it's actually blocking me from doing that. So you have to decide how you want your system to behave. But based on what I did, I should be able to come over here and choose, I want to place a area measurement specifically identified as carpet with the type, the item or label as Berber. But you can see here where when I choose a standardized markup from a tool set that's been set up properly with the right subject and label combination to match the right subject and item combination in the custom column, I'm not telling it that this is shag carpet and this is Berber. I'm just drawing the object. It's detecting that. It's figuring out the dollar value, and then it is then running the formula that says take the area, multiply it by the dollar value assigned, and then give me a total for that. So if I came back and said, you know, this is a 9x9 tile, now we've got a completely separate one down there. Another way of gathering up markups, and I'm going to grab all of these things here and delete all those. Another way of putting markups into your tool sets, and I'm going to go back to that other profile, that one called empty, so that we can just continue to push stuff into here. I'm going to open a brand new document. I'm going to open one from a template, and I have a template here for, architectural sections. I think there's some stuff in there I could grab. Yeah, we'll grab that symbol for grade right around in here. Let's say I wanted to capture that and make that a reusable markup that I can use in other drawings. That currently is not a markup. It's part of the actual PDF file. It's PDF content. All right? But there's a feature in Bluebeam to be able to capture PDF content and make a markup out of it. And that is called snapshot. If I go to edit, and I scroll down here, there's one called snapshot, and there's also snapshot content. They're slightly different, but this one will work just fine. You do snapshot and you simply click and drag a rectangle around the object that you're trying to capture. It puts it into a clipboard, and then you can right click and paste that into your drawing. And if that's exactly what you want, now you can right click on that thing and say add it to a tool chest. But before you do, I would suggest that you do what? You go to properties and you give it a decent name. All right, so it's not just a snapshot, it's grade. And then I'll go down and say add to tool chest and put it into that week 3 webinar. That way when I go and click on it and I place it in there, it's going to have grading symbol instead of just saying snapshot the way it did before. If I wanted the same thing for concrete, I wanted a repeatable copy of this concrete pattern, I would go in and do the same thing. I would say edit and snapshot, and I would pretty much do the exact same thing, grab as much of it as I felt was important. I would then paste it, and then I would grab that and I would do the same thing. Properties, I would call it scroll up to the subject up here and I'd call it concrete pattern. And then scroll down and add it to my tool set. Now, here's the thing that people do when they first start doing captures with snapshots is they get it in there and they forget that they put it into the drawing just so that they could grab it. So make sure that you don't forget to do that, to always go back and delete the stuff that's already there. Okay, next, creating counts. Now, I'm going to open up a different drawing here. In fact, I'm going to close down all of this stuff here, and we're going to talk about count markups and how that's relevant to your tool sets. If I go and open a new file, I'm going to say File, New Electrical File right here. So what I want to do is I want to count these symbols. Now I know I can come into the standard delivered markup toolbar, and there's a count button there, and I can choose that. I can go into the Properties toolbar, and I can go change it from a checkbox to some other shape. All right, so, but I'm just going to leave it as a checkbox right now. And I can just start counting. All right, there's one of those. Oh, that's different. That one, that's different. Here's one of these, one of these, one of these, one of these. And we talked about that last week or the week before when we were doing count searches and so on. But that's a way of counting items on your drawing. Now, if indeed you wanted that to look very different, I'm going to grab all of that and delete it. You can create your own markup and use it in order to count things. All right, now I'm going to put a little cloud here, and I'm going to grab that cloud, and I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to go to Properties, and I'm going to change a few things about it. First of all, I want to change, actually I'll just do it here. I'm going to change the layer, and I'm going to create a brand new layer called Spotlights. Doesn't exist until this moment, but now it does. Now I'm going to click on that thing, and I'll just come here and I'll say that this is a spotlight. Now I'm going to add it to our tool set by telling it to add it to our tool set, and it did. Now I'm halfway there. I've got a symbol that represents spotlights, but if I click on it and start saying, okay, there's one, there's one, there's one, it's not really counting at this point. What I need to do to have a counting version of that is I need to go into the tool set, I need to click on it, right click, and say I want to create a equivalent copy of that has the same parameters, but it will keep track of how many. It's an actual counting markup. You can always tell the difference between one that is and one that isn't, because one that is has this little 4 slashes with a slash through it, mathematical indicator with the little scale value. That's the count measurement. Now, if I go back into detail mode and I change this, and I'm going to call this Spotlight, I might even put counts, something along those lines. And maybe under label, I put in Spotlight, but you don't really have to. Right? It's just, I wanted you to know that that was there if you choose to use it. But now I can choose Spotlight, and I can come over here from my tool set, and I can say, all right, there's one, there's one, there's one, there's one, there's one, there's one. I hit escape. I go down and look at my markup list. It says, hey, for spotlights, there's 6 of those, and they all happen to be on a particular layer. And then I realize, oh yeah, I need to keep going with that. There's one here. So I go and I right click on the existing count. Now I can take advantage of the same count markup features I get when I do it from scratch. I can resume counting if I choose to do that. So, oh yeah, there's one over here. There's one over here. Do that, hit escape. Now it knows that there's 12 of those instead of 6. Or maybe I don't resume count, I do different counts where I come back and say, I want to do a count, boom, 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 boom. Hit an escape to get out of that. Now it knows that there's a total of 19, 12 of which are grouped together, and 7 of which for some reason are in a separate grouping. Right now you can always merge those together or split the counts. There's lots of things that you can do with that. But the other thing you can do, now that you have a tool set, and in that tool set you have a count item, when you come into the standard markup tool for shapes that's delivered from Bluebeam and you start doing manual counts, in addition to these shapes that were there before, if you have a tool set and in that tool set you have count markups, now you can come in and take advantage of those and say, okay, I want to start counting things, but in particular, I'd like to use this markup instead of one of the delivered shapes that comes from the system. Now, here's a more dramatic example of that. I'm going to change my profile back to the one I normally use, and I'm going to do that same task. I'm going to say, hey, I want to count some stuff. And when I go to do that pull down, so I've got multiple tool sets, and within each of those tool sets, I've got multiple markups with different subjects and labels and all that type of information. And also, it even remembers if that tool set has been set up to either display in symbol mode or drawing mode. So all of that information as you're interfacing with the tool sets is still there and available to you. I'm going to quickly jump back to the other profile to get to that tool set that we've been creating. And so far we've been putting stuff into it, but we really haven't done anything to the tool set itself. So I'm going to put it back to symbol so it's not just so big. Oh, and by the way, any one of these, if I double click on it, that's that drawing mode versus property mode. If I click on a count markup, you can't do that with a count markup. Those always go in drawing mode. Same thing with snapshots. If you do snapshots of PDF content and make that a markup in your library, when you double click on it, you don't have the option of going to property mode. That's only for markups that were created from scratch that aren't count markups, that allow you then to toggle it over to either drawing or property mode. So don't be surprised when you're trying to double click on a markup to toggle it over to property mode. It doesn't do anything because it's not set up for that. Now, this tool set has yet to be actually saved, and I've added a bunch of stuff into it. So occasionally, if you're changing the content of your tool set, from time to time, you're going to want to go and save the changes that you've done to it. Right? And you can always tell just by clicking on that gear and looking to see if it's been saved or not. Now, saving it updates the server in essence, or updates your local hidden folder where all of your tool sets are stored. It's not the same as making it available for someone else. To make this tool set available for someone else, you've got two choices. You can export the tool set itself and tell it wherever you want to put it. So I would go to my desktop. I would call it week 3. It automatically is assigned an extension called BTX, which it shows you stands for Bluebeam Toolset Exchange File. And I could do that, and I could send you a BTX file. When you receive it, all you have to do is double click on it, and it's going to automatically open it up inside of Bluebeam. It already knows in your registry that there's an anticipated file extension called a BTX file, and when somebody double clicks on it, it knows run Bluebeam and put it into the tool set. Now, if it's in an email instead of a jump drive or network drive, something like that, you're going to have to save it out of your email first and then double click on it, but it's really simple to do it. I showed recently another way of doing that is to go into your document under tools and do a file attachment and take that same BTX file that you created. And what I'm showing you, you can do with any file. All right? And I'm going to hit OK, and I'm just going to paste it into my title block. Whomever I share this PDF file with, it's got the BTX file as an attachment embedded into it. All they need is access to this PDF file, and then they can double click right on that paperclip, and it'll take that BTX file and automatically open it up and put it where it's supposed to be and make it one of their accessible toolset files as well. So how you get it to the other project participant doesn't matter as much as the fact that you need to be able to export it and then share that BTX file with them. Now, in the first week, we talked about the interface, and I mentioned that tool sets are part of what makes up a profile. If you were to go to Review and go to Profiles and Manage Profiles, I can take this entire profile that I chose to call empty, and there's a really bad lightning storm here right now, so hopefully I don't lose you guys, and I could export the profile, and as long as I have this button turned on, the profile will include the dependencies, and one of those dependencies are tool sets that are with that particular profile. Now, if I do that, it's going to create a file called a BPX file, a Bluebeam Profile Exchange file. Then you wouldn't need to send 4 or 5 or 6 separate BTX files. You could send one BPX file and they'd have exactly what they need, and they'd have more than just the tool set itself. So multiple ways of sharing these things. Okay, now there is a special kind of tool set that you can create called a punch list tool set. And it's different because you don't build it graphically the way we've been doing with this particular one. So I'm going to create a brand new tool set. I'm going to come in here, manage tools. I'm going to tell it new, and I'm going to call this week 3 punch list. I'll just hit OK. And it is going to use that name to create an empty tool set, and it's there. It's empty. Now, normally I would start drawing stuff and shoving it into that tool set, but this is different. This is a punch list, and a punch list tool set is something that can be driven by a comma-separated ASCII file. So if I go into here, if I double-click on that, or if I choose it and I hit modify, right here is an interface that says, do you want to import a list of punch key codes and have me build your library from that list? And if I choose that and I go to the desktop and I grab that CSV file called punch list, and now it did exactly what it should have done, which is create the symbols driven by the information that was provided. So I've got the subject, I've got what the item should look like, and then I've got the comments field itself. And in the future, if I change that comma separated file and I wanted to update this library, all I'd have to do is clear it out, say yes, come back in and re-import that updated CSV file. And in fact, I have a better example of that. If I now go to my desktop and go to personal punch list, by example, and grab this one, a little more sophisticated. When I import that one, you can see that it's updated it with a much larger list. Two other things I wanted to cover in the next few minutes is Bluebeam actually provides to you a few sample tool sets to work with. So when you go into review and you go into profiles and you go into review, this is the standard delivered set of tool sets that come with the review profile. But if you change profiles, if you go over here and say, I want to see advanced, advanced not only changes the way things are laid out, but if you go look at the list of tool sets, there's actually different tool set symbols in there. In particular, if you use the one called field issues, that one has quite a few examples of punch list driven tool sets that are in there as well. But there's more that are available. All right, so if I open I'm going to close this down and open up a Chrome browser real quick. I want to show you a website where you can download free things from Bluebeam. Now I keep it right here. The actual URL is support.bluebeam.com/review-extensions. And under this web page for extensions, there's multiple things that are free up there that you can download: stamps, dictionaries, multiple profiles, and among that list are tool sets. If you click on that, it just jumps down into the page, and it looks like, oh great, they gave me like 7 tool sets. Now there's 7 in that one category called mechanical, but there's also plumbing, there's also electrical, interior space design, oil and gas, architectural, construction, estimation, and office. There's a large number of pre-created tool sets up there that you can choose to grab and just download to your local machine. Now they all come down as zip files. All right, you'll see here this is a whatever.zip, but inside that zip file is just a BTX file. And then you can grab that and you can double click on it and it will make it part of your own Bluebeam profile so that you can use it going forward. All right, and again, that web address was support.bluebeam.com/review-extensions. Okay, I've got about, let's see, I've got about 4 minutes left. I want to take a few minutes and I want to look at the questions that are coming in. Okay, somebody's asking specifically to show a formula. I can do that real quick. Now, it doesn't have anything to do with a tool set in particular unless you're using subject and label to synchronize with subject and item. Custom columns are their own, separate entity, but I'll go ahead and show those. All right, if I open up my markup list at the bottom of the screen and I go into custom columns, right there, and yeah, that's fine, and I go into custom columns and I create a new column, right? I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say unit cost. And that's going to be a choice markup that's going to have 3 choices. I'm going to add a choice here that says this is stainless, right? And we'll assign that a value of maybe $2. And we're going to add another one that says this is PVC, and we're going to assign that a value of 0.25 cents. And we're going to add another one here that says that this is chrome, something along those lines, chrome. And chrome is going to have a value of $1, a linear foot. All right, so I've got that and I hit OK. I'm anticipating that I'm using these values to track length of pipe or length of wire or length of whatever. So my formula has to be based on some logic of what it is I'm interested in tracking. So I'm going to add an additional column here called total cost, and it's going to be a formula. And the formula, I want it to be in 2 decimal places. I want it to be a currency value. And now you get to the expression. Now the system helps you with that. So if I come in here and I start typing in unit, it says, okay, you've got something called unit cost. Well, that's what I want. I want the unit cost times, and I start typing in the word length, and it tells me, okay, so what you want is a formula that says take whatever that assigned unit cost was, right, and I'll hit OK. So now I've got unit cost and total cost, and I'll hit OK to save that, and now they're showing up down here. Well, I need a scale because this new file doesn't have a scale, so I'll put a scale into it. And now I'll do a linear polylength, and I'm going to do a click and a double click, representing what that thing is, but I haven't put any measurement values in there yet. So if I choose it and I double click, and I assign it a value that's stainless, it's going to automatically figure out that, okay, based on your choices and your scaled measurement, it's 40 feet long at $2 a foot, and it's slightly over. So that's what the total account is going to be. And your formulas can be much more sophisticated and complex than that, but that's a common use of a formula, is to be able to take an existing custom column and some form of measurement, either counting, area measurements, volumes, linear measurements, but it's typically combined with taking a custom column with some unit of measure and then calculating those values and displaying those into the resulting column that's there. The last thing I'll show as we're wrapping up, I think I got about 2 minutes left, is working with dynamic legends. And what I'm going to do is going to delete all of this. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to draw a markup. I'm just going to draw a circle. And I'm going to draw another circle, and I'm going to draw another circle. And then I'm going to draw a rectangle, right, from here to here, from here to here, from here to here. Right? Now, I can grab any one of those and I can right click and I can say, I want to create a dynamic legend, and I can start popping my legend in over here. And based on my own standards, it's coming in here and it's telling me that, okay, this is all handled through properties. I've got my default set to roadway quantities. I would call it shape counts. And I would change that obviously to something different. And I would put it back on as the shape counts. I could change, I don't care about volume, so I would go in and edit the columns there and get rid of volume, but I do care about quantity. But see, it only tracked the one item that I picked. Now, if I continue to draw those, it'll count those. If I come and grab these, I can add those to a legend, say, oh yeah, add that to that. And it'll go grab it and it'll add that to that. But you can do that same sort of thing where the legend is tied to a tool set And anything you place from that tool set, it's going to automatically start tracking it. So I'm going to go to a profile where I have more tool sets to work with. I'm going to go to mine, and I'm going to choose a tool set here called electrical symbols. And I'm going to delete this one that I did earlier, and I'm going to place from the tool set, I'm going to tell it to create a legend, and I'll place my legend in there. And now as I start placing items in here, here's some sort of exit sign. I start hitting data points in the file. Right? It's automatically tracking how many of those there are, and I don't have to constantly come back and tell it, oh yeah, also track this thing, also track that thing. As soon as I continue to place other symbols from that same tool set, it already knows this legend is interested in quantities that come from this library, and that relationship is automatically built in there. You can even grab a legend that you've created for a particular library, and you can right-click on it because it's nothing but a markup, and you can add it to the library that you're pulling from, so that in the future, when you're ready to place one of these legends in another drawing, you don't have to start from scratch and edit it every time. You can just grab the symbol, place it, and then build that, tell it that that legend is tied to that tool set. And it's a great feature if you've never experimented with legends as they relate to tool sets. Take the time to run through it and practice with it, and I think you're going to like it a whole lot. So we're exactly 3 o'clock. I am out of time to respond to any questions, but again, I will review all of the questions. I think I've answered 2 of it. There's a total of 6. Anyone I did not respond to, I will edit the video and put it at the end of the video. Next week, Tuesday at 2 p.m. is going to be all about the cloud technology available from Bluebeam, and we're going to be talking about not only Studio, but Bluebeam Drawings as well, which was just released a year ago. It's a new free cloud-based server viewing application. If you've never seen that, I'll be covering that next week as well. So thank you for your time. As you're leaving, again, please take a few minutes to fill out that survey. And if you do want us to contact you, by all means, make sure that you include your contact information on that last question. Everybody have a great day, and thank you for attending. This week, there were only 2 questions that I didn't answer live during the webinar. The first of which was, can we have logic or Boolean functions inside of custom column formulas? And unfortunately, I believe the answer to that is no. Here, I'm going in and creating a custom column. I'll hit add. I'll tell it that I want this to be a formula-based one. And if I go and click on the expression and I look at all of the available variables, constants, and functions, you'll see in there mathematical functions like square root, sine, tangent, cosine, values like that. But what you're not going to see are greater than, less than, or equal to, or some of those types of mathematical formulas. So unfortunately, I don't think that's a feature that Bluebeam is going to support. Now, having said that, with Review 20, if you have a list of markups and you use the new filter capabilities, it does have the ability to create a custom filter, and within that filter, be able to filter by values of begins with, does not contain, and if these are mathematical values, then it would say greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, and you'd be able to perform Boolean type filtering, just not with custom columns and the formulas. And the other question was, if we distribute a Bluebeam profile exchange file so that our project participants can get to our profiles and tool sets, would they be able to edit the tool sets that we distribute? And the answer to that is yes. Keep in mind that the only purpose of the BPX or BTX is to deploy the document. Once they have it and they install it on their system, they've got control over it. The only exception to that possibly would be if you set up a shared network drive somewhere and they only had read access to it, but I have not tested that personally, and that may or may not work, but it's certainly worth experimentation. That's it. I hope you find this video helpful, and you'll review the other videos available as well.